Huh.
Watching Kyle's unboxing videos again?
Yeah, he always finds the coolest... No way! A robot dog? Gotta ask where he got it.
Or use your Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. Just draw a circle around the dog on your screen, and it shows you where to buy it right in the app.
Oh, I just learned a new trick. And that for once, I beat Kyle to the next big thing.
Circle it, find it with the new Galaxy S24 Ultra and circle the search with Google. Get yours now at Samsung.com. Internet connection required. Results may vary based on visuals.
The Two-Footed Podcast is brought to you by EPLindex.com and our presenting sponsor, Liberty Shield. Liberty Shield is a VPN provider. A virtual privacy network allows you to go online, change your location, access things you're geo-blocked from, while keeping your data safe. So, as an example, if you are a UK expat and want access to BBC iPlayer to watch Match of the Day, or ITV Hub, or all four, but you get that message that says this content is not available in your location, a Liberty Shield VPN gets you around that block, allows you to watch whatever you want on those services while also keeping your data safe. And it goes further than that. It allows you to open up Netflix's entire library by just changing your IP address. Liberty Shield is the #1 rated VPN provider on Trustpilot with 5-star ratings across the board. So go to libertyshield.com right now, use the code EPL25 and get either the hardware package or the software package. The hardware package is a router that you plug into your existing router, and any item you want to change the IP address on, be it your phone or your television, you connect that to the new Liberty Shield router. All other items can remain connected to your existing router. There's also a software package, which is instantly downloadable to your device, and you can get using straight away. Again, libertyshield.com, EPL25 for 25% off at checkout. We're also brought to you by Home of Hopcroft, a giftware and homeware company located in Scotland but shipping worldwide. Check out homeofhopcroft.co.uk and do check out the EPL Index and Anfield Index shops, which you'll find on Etsy. Use the codes EPL10 or RED10 for 10% off at checkout. And lastly, do remember to check out A Tad Predictable, hosted by Tadiwa. That podcast is on this feed before every Premier League match week. And then the EPL Roundtable, hosted by Kevin DeVries, on its own EPL Roundtable feed. So just search EPL Roundtable in your podcast device. And that's out after every match week. Now, on with the show. What's good, boys and girls? Two-Footed Podcast. Today is Wednesday. It is the 31st of January, and it is absolutely pissing rain. That is an absolute shocker of a day. Anyway, we had football last night. We had some good football and we had some bad football. The good football took place largely at Selhurst Park. Crystal Palace 3, Sheffield United 2. Ben Brereton Diaz put the Blades 1 up. Eberechi Eze equalised. Lovely finish after a great Michael Olise cross. James McAtee made it 2-1. The aid of a slight deflection, but another good goal. I should have pointed out Brereton Diaz's goal was really good as well. Eberechi Eze made it 2-2 on 27 minutes with a gorgeous left-footed shot from about 25 yards. And then Michael Olise with the winner, a stunning volley. Just a cushioned, controlled volley from outside the box to give Crystal Palace the win. You will struggle to find a game with 5 better goals than this. Even with the McAtee one taking a slight deflection, it's still a great goal. But the other 4 were outstanding. And the 3 Palace goals were great, genuinely great, showing what they're capable of. If they could just rid themselves of Roy, I genuinely think they could be one of the most entertaining teams in the league. Good win for them last night. They'll be chuffed. They needed that win. They are 14th in the Premier League, 24 points, but they have played 2 games more than Brentford, who are 2 points behind them. Sheffield United stay rooted to the bottom of the league, and they'll be a little bit disappointed in that they've scored 2 goals in both of their last 2 games, against Brighton in the Cup and now against Palace, and they've come out on the losing side in both games. Moving on, the bad football was played at Craven Cottage, a very dour 0-0 draw between Fulham and Everton. Everton missed two ridiculous sitters in this game. Ridiculous sitters. One from Calvert-Lewin, one from Beto. Nobody to blame other than themselves. Like, the two sides combined for 46 shots, and yet only 10 of them were on target. Everton had the better chances, but it was not a good game of football. Luton 4, Brighton 0, a slapping for the Seagulls. This game was pretty much over after 3 minutes. Adebayo in the first minute, 25, 26 seconds in. Ogbena made it 2 on 3 minutes. Adebayo made it 3 just before half time. And then he wrapped up his hat-trick on 56. What was really staggering from this game, Luton were really good. I'm not taking anything away from them. They played really, really well. They fully deserved their victory. If anything, they probably should have won by more. But what was really, really staggering in this game was just how bad Brighton were defensively. Van Hecke, Dunk, and Igor were all dreadful. I don't know why Jason Steele is starting in the Premier League. That guy wasn't good enough to start in the Championship a few years ago. Starting James Milner is starting with 10 men. The guy can't play at this level anymore and hasn't been able to for 3.5 years. Brighton have won, I think, 3 of their last 16. I think there's questions to be asked about De Zerbi. They've had a lot of injury issues, without question. But his decision-making is very, very concerning. He's starting Danny Welbeck up front. You've got Evan Ferguson sitting on the bench. You're starting James Milner. You've got Tariq Lamptey sitting on the bench. You could play Pascal Gross as your wing-back and start Jakob Moder or Carlos Baliba. When Milner gets hurt, you bring on Hinchelwood rather than Lamptey, Moder, or Baliba. Buenanote had an absolute stinker. Was at fault for 2 of the goals, just giving the ball away really, really cheaply. But when you've got Danny Welbeck up front and that back 3, especially Dunk, who's having a dreadful season, which isn't getting talked about enough. Lewis Dunk has been dreadful this year. And he's so slow. He is absolutely, it's painful to watch him try and run at the moment. I don't know if he's carrying an injury or what it is, but he cannot move right now. And Steele just isn't a Premier League goalkeeper. You've got Verbruggen sitting on the bench. You spent significant money to bring him in. And for some reason, you're starting Steele. That defence last night was a disgrace. But the only other option you've got is Adam Webster, who's also been dreadful this season. Brighton need to get their act together. Nottingham Forest 1, Arsenal 2. Gabriel Jesus opened the scoring on 65 minutes and Bukayo Saka made it 2 on 72. Arsenal had dominated the first half, but continued to let themselves down with the final ball and their inability to finish. But luckily for them, Nottingham Forest gifted them 2 goals with appalling defensive displays. Taiwo Awoniyi pulled one back by just bullying William Saliba in a very funny manner. But it was too little too late. And Arsenal get a deserved win. Without question, a deserved win. Aston Villa 1, Newcastle 3. Fabian Schär opens the scoring on 32, doubles the lead on 36. There's an Alex Moreno own goal in which he Phil Babbed himself. If you don't know what that means, just put Phil Babb goalpost into YouTube. Ollie Watkins pulled one back. Villa were dreadful. Really, really poor. So easy for Newcastle to just play through them. play over them, play in behind them. Really, really poor. Was expecting a lot more from Villa. Now, maybe the game against Chelsea took more out of them than we thought, but this was a dreadful display. Massively missing Jacob Ramsey. Diaby had an absolute stinker. John McGinn was really poor and missed a good chance. Boubacar Kamara had his worst game of the season. Douglas Luiz might as well not have been there. And that defence was all over the place. If not for Martinez, that one probably gets ugly. So there are 5 games from last night. We have 3 games tonight. Manchester City and Burnley kicks off at 7:30. We have Tottenham and Brentford also kicks off at 7:30. And then Liverpool against Chelsea in an 8:15 kickoff. The table at the moment has Liverpool 2 points clear of Arsenal, who've played a game more. Arsenal are 3 points clear of City, who have 2 games in hand on Arsenal. City are level on points with Villa, but with a better goal difference and 2 games less played. Behind Villa is where it gets interesting, because Spurs, with a win tonight, can go level on points with Villa. If they win by 1 goal, they'll have the same goal difference. If they win by any more than that, they'll go ahead of Villa. Then it's a 5-point gap to West Ham. Then a 3-point gap to Newcastle, who win for the first time in, it seems like, months. They had lost 4 or 5 in a row before that one. Brighton level on points with Newcastle, as are Manchester United, but United have a game in hand. They will play tomorrow. They do have a worse goal difference than both Newcastle and Brighton. Then Chelsea on 31 points, they're 10th. Wolves on 29 points, they're 11th. Then it's Fulham on 25, Bournemouth on 25, but they have 2 games in hand over Fulham. Crystal Palace on 24, Brentford on 22, but again, 2 games in hand. Nottingham Forest on 20. Luton Town, 19 points from 21 games. So a game in hand over Nottingham Forest and a better goal difference. Then it's Everton on 18 points, and they've played a game more than Luton. Now, that Luton game is the Tom Lockyer Bournemouth game. So I don't know what's going to happen with that. I assume it'll just be replayed. I don't know if they'll just restart it. I assume it'll be a full replay. A tough game for Luton to go there, but, you know, if they play like they did last night, they might be okay. Below Everton, you've got a 6-point gap to Burnley, and then a 2-point gap to Sheffield United. As I said, 3 games tonight and 2 games then tomorrow night. Tomorrow night's games are West Ham, Bournemouth, and Wolves, Manchester United. You'd fancy Wolves at home, given how good their home form has been. And you'd fancy West Ham, even though, like, Bournemouth have been one of the form teams in the league. They have lost their last 2 league games to Tottenham and Liverpool. So West Ham, a top 6 side, will fancy themselves to win that game. We had AFCON last night, and it appears I jinxed Morocco. Morocco 0, South Africa 2. Magopa and Mokena with the goals, 57 and 95 minutes. And Morocco, who I thought were the odds-on favourite to win it after Senegal went out, are now out themselves. And they have no excuse to be making. Like, you've got your first choice defence, you pretty much your first choice midfield. And while you are missing a couple of players in attack, you've still got the exceptionally talented Amin Adli, you've still got Youssef En-Nesyri, and you've still got Abde. So you don't really have too many excuses to make. South Africa don't have any stars in that team. I mean, you've got Percy Tau, is probably the best known of that team. He was owned by Brighton for 3 years, only made 6 appearances in all competitions. He's a good player in other leagues. He's been good in Belgium. He's obviously been good in his homeland, and he's currently playing well in Egypt for Al Ahly. but he's probably the biggest name in that team. But they have a togetherness. They have a team spirit that I thought we saw from Morocco, both in this competition and at the World Cup, but was completely lacking last night. Just wasn't there at all. They didn't look like a team. Didn't look like a team at all. Mali beat Burkina Faso 2-1. An Edmond Top-Sapa own goal put Mali 1 up. Lassine Sinioko made it 2 just after half-time. And Bertrand Traore gave Burkina Faso some hope, but they weren't able to find the equaliser. And they go out. So we have our quarterfinals set on Friday. The earlier kickoff, a 5 p.m. UK kickoff, it is Nigeria versus Angola. And then the 8 p.m. kickoff, we'll see the Democratic Republic of Congo take on Guinea. And then on Saturday, in the 5 p.m. game, it's Mali versus Ivory Coast. And in the later game, it is Cape Verde versus South Africa. Now, do I attempt to reverse jinx South Africa to the final? I'd like to see Bafana do well. I've overlooked them in this tournament. I wrote them off in this tournament. Cape Verde have definitely been the more impressive team in the competition. You could make an argument they've been the most impressive team thus far in the competition. I think Cape Verde will win. I want South Africa to win. I think Nigeria will win. I think Guinea will win. I think Mali will win. And I think Cape Verde will win. So congratulations to Angola, Democratic Republic of Congo, Ivory Coast, and South Africa on your places in the semi-finals. In the Asian Cup then, we had Uzbekistan, Thailand yesterday, 2-1 to Uzbekistan. That game was over before we did this podcast, so I spoke about that then. In the later game, Saudi Arabia won, South Korea 0. Radif scored just after half-time. It looked like South Korea were going out, but in the 99th minute, Cho Kwi-sung equalised and sent the game to extra time. Extra time couldn't split them, so it went to penalties, and South Korea win 4-2 on penalties. So South Korea will take on Australia in what is, I think, the glamour tie of the quarterfinals. Today, Japan beat Bahrain 3-1. Ritsu Duan, Kubo, and Ueda got the goals for Japan. Zion Suzuki, the Japanese goalkeeper, scored an own goal, but it was all fairly plain sailing for the Japanese, who do look quite formidable. Japan will take on the winner of the 4 p.m. kicks off in about 20 minutes, Iran versus Syria, which should be a good game. So Tajikistan versus Jordan, Australia versus South Korea. They're the Friday games. Tajikistan and Jordan is an 11:30 kickoff. Australia, South Korea is a 3:30 kickoff. If your partner works away from the home and you work at home, well, you can watch some football while they're not there, and they never need to know. Then on Saturday, it is either Iran or Syria against Japan in the early kickoff, the 11:30, and then Qatar, Uzbekistan in the 3:30 kickoff. So both competitions throwing up upsets, throwing up unpredictability. I think a bit more so, obviously, in the AFCON. I think most people would have had Australia, South Korea, and Japan, and probably Qatar getting to this point. But I also think a lot of people would have had Saudi Arabia, who would have gotten to this point if South Korea had won their group. South Korea failing to win their group is what kind of screwed Saudi Arabia. But yeah, I'm very much looking forward to the semi-finals, or the quarterfinals rather. Then the semi-finals will be Tuesday and Wednesday, and then the final is next Saturday. And then likewise with the AFCON, the semi-finals are Friday, Saturday. The quarterfinals are Friday, Saturday. Both semi-finals are Wednesday, and then the final will be on the Sunday. The third and fourth place playoff is on the Saturday. Lots and lots to look forward to. Very, very good stuff. Right. Before we go to break and come back with our nostalgia bit, I've seen some stupidity. I've seen a lot of stupidity, but I've seen some that just really gets under my skin. I saw some idiot put together a team, a World 11 based on right now. That's what he said. World 11 based on right now. And he picked Gregor Kubol in goal. Over Alisson Becker? No. It got worse from there. The usual names that have no business in a World 11, Saliba, Rudiger, Saka, De Bruyne, who has played once this season, just not having it. So quickly, World 11 right now, based on form this season, Alisson, Trent, Kim, Virgil. We'll come back to left back. There's a couple of options there. Midfield picks itself. It's Jude Bellingham, it's Rodri, and it's Fede Valverde. There's no debate to be had in midfield. None. And the forward line is Salah, Haaland, and Mbappe. There's no debate to be had there. There's no debate in the forward line. There's no debate in the midfield. There's no debate at right back or the two centre-back spots, and there's no debate to be had in goal. The only position that's open for debate is left back. A big part of that is Alphonso Davies is not having a particularly great season. Now, there are a couple of left backs who I do think are playing well. I think Lucas Hernandez is playing quite well for PSG. I know a lot of people view him as a centre-back. He plays left-back for PSG. I think he's a really, really good left-back. So I would happily take debates on him as the best left-back in the world right now. Alejandro Baldi, I would also take a strong case for. Now, he hasn't been as good this season as he was last season, and he is now injured and out for the foreseeable future. He's had tendon surgery on a hamstring, which generally is not a good indicator for the future. That can be something that reoccurs a lot. And you look how Tariq Lamptey's been affected since he had the same surgery. Now, his was worse by all accounts, but still. I think you've got to go to Italy to find the best left back in the world right now. I think you've got to go to Italy, and then I think you've got to direct yourself to the city of Milan. You've got Theo Hernandez on the red and black side, and you've got Federico Di Marco on the blue and black side. Theo is the better player. I think without doubt, Theo is the better player. But I do feel that this season, Federico Di Marco has been the best left back in the world. He is playing sensational football. His crossing is, I think, the best in the world. Defensively, he's not great, but he works hard. He at least gives his all most of the time. Not all the time, most of the time. I think I'm going to go for him right now as the best left back in the world. But Theo has a strong case. And I would say if you're looking at the last 2 years, it's probably Theo Hernandez. With respect to Alphonso Davies, who I think overall is probably the best left back on the planet. The other thing of stupidity that I saw was a debate done by multiple gaggles of twats on the invincible Arsenal team versus Manchester United 07-08 double winning team. Who had the better team? What would be a combined 11? And as you would expect from said Gaggles, dreadful, dreadful opinion after dreadful, dreadful opinion. So I thought, sure, I might as well throw my lot in with this and educate some of these children who didn't see any of these players play and really shouldn't be commenting on things that they know nothing about. So, goalkeeper in a combined 11 is Edwin van der Sar. Van der Sar is one of the great goalkeepers in history. I would say in the last 20 years, he's probably top 6, top 7. Last 30 years overall, because he came through in the 90s. He's probably top 6, top 7. There's no question at all he's a better goalkeeper than Jens Lehmann. So we move to right back. One idiot picked Gary Neville. Gary Neville didn't play that season. He made one appearance as a sub. He was injured all year round. Wes Brown was the right back in that Manchester United team. So it's Wes Brown versus Loren, and it's Loren. As a right back, it's Loren. Left back is no contest. It's Ashley Cole, without question. Patrice Evra was a good player. Ashley Cole is one of the great left backs of all time. It's Ashley Cole. Centre backs, of course, the moronic groups, they went for, let's just pick the United two. There is no world in which Rio Ferdinand was better than Sol Campbell. Sol Campbell is the best centre back between the two sides. So it's Sol Campbell and one of the United pair. And Nemanja Vidic was the better of the pair. So we go Campbell, Vidic. Into midfield. One idiot suggested Roy Keane. Roy Keane had left United multiple years before this. Patrick Vieira is the starting point in this midfield. Next to Patrick Vieira will be Paul Scholes. Cristiano will play right wing. Now, he did predominantly play left side in this team, but we're sticking him right wing because he'll just go where I tell him to go. Because you've got to have Robert Pires. You've just got to have Robert Pires on the left. There's just no doubt. And then up front, United, they had Rooney, they had Tevez, but Arsenal had Bergkamp and Henry. Henry is obviously in. And then it's a choice between Bergkamp, Tevez, and Rooney. So that season, Rooney had 18 goals in 43 appearances. Carlos Tevez had 19 goals in 48 appearances. Dennis Bergkamp wouldn't have had the goal tally to match. He had 5 in 38, 9 as sub. It's between the United pair that season. Bergkamp was very much at the tail end at that point. Now, the alternative here is you change the shape a little bit and you go 4-3-3, and maybe you bring Michael Carrick into the team. So you go Scholes, Carrick, Vieira, Cristiano, Henry, Pires. United played a 4-3-3. Arsenal played a 4-4-2. It was too much nanny that year. Too much nanny. I would go Tevez over Rooney, personally. but I like the idea of Michael Carrick in midfield. I'm going to go Michael Carrick in midfield. So Scholes, Vieira. Scholes. Am I picking Scholes based on historic? Or am I picking him based on performance that year? I'm probably picking him based on historic performance. Michael Carrick was great that year and really stepped up in big games. Maybe I go Carrick and Vieira in midfield. Cristiano and Perez in the wide roles, and Tevez and Henry up front. I think that's what we'll go with. Van der Sar, Loren, Campbell, Vidic, Cole. So in the defence, it's 3 of the Arsenal players, 1 United player plus the United goalkeeper. In midfield, it's 2 and 2. And up front, it's 1 and 1. The manager is Ferguson. I love Wenger, but the manager is Ferguson. So of the 12 picks, it's 6 and 6. Winning the Champions League and Premier League double is a bigger achievement than going unbeaten, though. Going unbeaten is an incredible Premier League achievement. But winning a Champions League, Premier League double is a bigger achievement, just in case anybody was curious about that. We'll take a break. When we come back, we've got some nostalgia. See you after this. Right, welcome back. So, before we move on, I should just point out, Ferland Mendy also worth a shout for best left-back this season, in truth. He's exceptionally good defensively, not so good going forward, but very, very good defensively. If he's a little bit taller, he'd probably be converted into a centre-back. Right, nostalgia time. So I mentioned yesterday I'll do Wimbledon. I want to do Wimbledon and Sheffield Wednesday, the Premier League eras, over the next couple of weeks. But today, we have to carry on with our review of Serie A. We started in 1985 last week, and I believe we ended with the 94-95 season. So today, we will run from 95-96 up until 05-06. So let's jump straight in to your Serie A season. AC Milan winning the league title under Fabio Capello. Ahead of Juventus, 8 points clear. Lazio finishing third. Fiorentina fourth. Roma, Parma, and Inter 5-7. And relegated, we have Bari, we have Torino, we have Cremonese, and we have Padova. So all of them say goodbye. Igor Proti, I feel like I might have done this season. Igor Proti finishes as top scorer with 24 goals for Bari. I know I talked about him last week. Maybe I'm repeating myself on this season, but such is life. Beppe Signore, joint top scorer for Lazio, also 24 goals. Enrico Chiesa with 22 for Sampdoria. Gabriel Batistuta with 19 for Fiorentina. Marco Branca scored 19 between Roma and Inter. Oliver Bierhoff setting himself up for his famous summer at the Euros, scoring 17 for Udinese. Luis Oliveira got 16 for Cagliari. Nicolas Amoruso got 14 for Padova, as did Nicola Caccia and Pierluigi Casaraghi. So they are our top scorers. In the Coppa Italia, Fiorentina would claim glory, beating Atalanta 3-0 on aggregate, 1-0 in the home leg, 2-0 in the away leg. Batistuta with 2 of their 3 goals, 8 for the competition for Batigol, making him by far the top scorer. Moving on then to our European competitions for the year. In the European Cup, Juventus play Ajax. And was it a vintage final? Absolutely not. Not even a little bit. But Juve managed to bring home the European Cup for the first time since 1985. Ravanelli scores on 13 minutes. Jari Litmanen scores on 41 minutes. Remember, Ajax, the previous season, had beaten Milan 1-0 to win the European Cup. In the penalty shootout, Edgar Davids and Sonny Soloy missed to give the trophy to Juve. Ciro Ferrara, Gianluca Pessotta, Michel Padovano and Vladimir Jukovic scoring the penalties for Juve. Big win for Juventus that year. Big win. Having won a domestic title the year before, they were, you look at that team, Peruzzi in goal, Ferreira and Viekovod at centre-back, both legends of the game. Torricelli at right back, Pesotto at left back, both very, very good. Paulo Sousa, Didier Deschamps, and Antonio Conte in midfield. That's just graft. The guile of Sousa, but also a hard worker and very good defensively. But the graft of Deschamps and Conte, just too much on the night for Ajax to break down. We know how Ajax were playing with that 3-diamond-3. We know that their aim was to just sort of wear you down and find holes, but Deschamps and Conte didn't allow it. Then up front, you had the Ravanelli right side, Vialli through the middle, and Del Piero left side front three, which that front three coming together had ended Roberto Baggio's time in Turin, the development of Del Piero. On the bench, you had Jugovic, who came on just before half-time for Conte. Delivio and Padovano, they came off the bench. Perini and Michelangelo Rampula were the unused subs on the day. In the UEFA Cup, now the Europa League, I've jumped the wrong one. There we go. Bayern Munich beat Bordeaux. That's the Bordeaux team with Zidane and Christophe Dugarry and Vicente Lizarazu, who'd obviously go on and be best known for his time with Bayern, as well as the French national team. No Italian representation, unusually. And likewise, in the Cup Winners' Cup, Paris Saint-Germain beating Rapid Vienna 1-0. The only goal of the game in that one was scored by Bruno Ngotti, in case you're wondering. Bruno Ngotti had won the European Cup with Marseille. Did he not? No, he didn't. Did he? Was he in that Marseille team? Or have I mixed him up with somebody else? I've definitely mixed him up with... I've mixed him up with Anglima, haven't I? I have. I've mixed him up with Anglima. Never mind then. Moving on to the 96-97 season, and Juventus reclaimed top spot. Some notable managers here. Dino Zoff, legendary goalkeeper in charge of Lazio that year. Arrigo Sacchi returns to Milan with Capello going to Real Madrid. Carlo Ancelotti at Parma. Nevio Scala is with Perugia that year. Alberto Zaccheroni, who managed everybody at one point or another, was with Udinese. And Francesco Guidin was with Vicenza. Always an interesting manager, Guidin. Played really good football, quite un-Italian in his approach. Another one of the journeyman managers who did kind of a year everywhere, but managed Vicenza, managed Udinese, managed Bologna, Palermo, Genoa. Had 3 more spells with Palermo, then was with Parma. Then he was with Udinese, and then he worked for the family, the Pozzo family, as a technical director before coming out of retirement to take over at Swansea in what was an ill-fated move. But his team always played good football. So Juve win the league 2 points ahead of Parma. What a shame. What a shame Parma couldn't pull that off. Inter third, Lazio fourth, Udinese fifth, Sampdoria sixth, Bologna seventh, Vicenza eighth, Cagliari, Perugia, Hellas Verona, and Reggiana all relegated. Milan finishing in 11th spot as the Sacchi return did not go very well. In Filippo Inzaghi, top scorer for Atalanta with 24 goals. Vincenzo Montella with 22 for Sampdoria. Abel Balbo scored 17 for Roma. You've got Roberto Mancini there with 15, Beppe Signori with 15, Enrico Chiesa with 14, and Yuri Djorkaeff of Inter with 14. In the Coppa Italia, Vicenza win their first Coppa Italia. So I mentioned Guidolin and what an interesting manager he was. And here he is winning himself a Coppa Italia with Vicenza. They lost the first leg 1-0 in Naples, a Napoli team featuring Roberto Ayala among a fairly nondescript team, not a strong Napoli team at all. In the second leg, Vicenza win 3-0. 1-0 within the 90 minutes. Game went to extra time. They scored 2 more. And again, you're looking at that Vicenza team, and there's no star names in it. There's nobody that really, even years afterwards, kind of popped and had a big career. I mean, Ambrosetti had a decent career. Viviani had a decent career. But it's just a lot of hard grafting players sculpted into a really good team by a really good manager. And what a season for them. 8th in the league, really good, and winning the Coppa. You can't argue the Coppa Italia. 2 P's, David. Right, moving on to our European action that year. And Juventus get themselves to another European Cup final. Having beaten Ajax the previous year, they go into this one as favourites. The Olympiastadion in Munich, and they face Borussia Dortmund. And unfortunately for them, this is the best Borussia Dortmund team of all time, with Matthias Sammer and Jürgen Kohler and Stefan Reuter and Andy Muller and Stefan Chapuisat and Paulo Sousa, their own former midfielder. And they lose 3-1. Karl-Heinz Riedle scores twice to put Dortmund 2-0 ahead in the first half. Del Piero pulls one back. Lars Ricken comes off the bench and with his first touch scores from about 40 yards to make it secure. That Dortmund team is one of my favourite teams ever. Genuinely is. I just think it's a phenomenal team. Back to front. Sammer, Kohler, Reuter, Jörg Heinrich is very good as well. Sosa, Paul Lambert, Andy Muller, Riedle and Chapuisat up front. That's such a strong team. It's such a strong team. And even the one I didn't mention, the 2 I didn't mention, Stefan Klose was a good goalkeeper, and Martin Cree was a really, really reliable centre-back. He could play anywhere, but he was really reliable at centre-back. The Juve team had changed a bit. You had Perini in at right back, Ferreira and Paulo Montero at centre-back, Mark Giuliano at left-back. So you've actually got 3 of the back 4 have changed from the season before. In midfield, 2 of the midfielders didn't start the previous year, Delivio and Jugovic. They both came off the bench. No Conte in that team. And obviously Sosa had swapped sides. They had added Zinedine Zidane, though. And they'd moved to a diamond in midfield. So you got Zidane behind Vieri and Boksic. So the front 3 had all changed as well. Well, Del Piero was on the bench because he wasn't fully fit. But Vialli had gone to Chelsea. Ravanelli had gone to Middlesbrough. The team had been broken up. They brought in Christian Vieri and Nicolo Amoruso. And I remember World Soccer did a feature on the 2 of them. describing Vieri as just kind of a bulldozer forward, which is what he was, to be fair. And he at that point, as a 23-year-old, when he arrived at Juve, had been a journeyman. I've talked about his journeyman career before and how it continued afterwards. It's such a strange career for such a great player. But Nicolo Amoruso had joined from Padova, where they'd signed, obviously, Del Piero from, and he was the more highly regarded of the two. Like, he was coming in off a really good season where he'd scored 14 goals in 33 league games for Padova. Vieri had only scored 9 and 21 for Atalanta, playing second fiddle a little bit there. And Amoruso was the more skilled one, the more cultured one that they thought was going to be the sort of the star of the pair. Now, he had a good career. Like, he did, to his credit. He won 3 Serie A titles, won a Supercoppa, was part of 2 Juve teams that got to a European Cup final. He had a good career, but he never came close to having the career of Christian Vieri. Where am I? Oh, yeah. I am looking for the Europa League final, is what I'm looking for. And Schalke beat Inter Milan. Strange. First game is in Schalke, ends 1-0 to Schalke. There's some, again, just phenomenal players in both of these teams. In that Schalke team, you've got Jens Lehmann, you've got Olaf Thon, Andreas Muller, not obviously the same one that's had Dortmund at this point, but that Andreas Muller would play for Schalke afterwards. You've got Mark Wilmots and you've got Martin Max, all really good players. But that Inter team, I just don't know how they weren't absolutely dominant in this. Like, this is just... You've got Gianluca Pagliuca in goal. You've got Beppe Bergami, one of the best defenders of all time. You've got, in midfield, Javier Zanetti, who'd been brought in with the view of being the long-term replacement for Bergami, but started for them in midfield. Ciriaco Sforza, Aaron Winter, that's a really, really good midfield. Maurizio Gans and Ivan Zamorano up front. That's a better team than what Schalke have. But Schalke win the first game 1-0. In the second game, at the San Siro, Inter win 1-0. Zamorano scores a late goal to send the game to extra time. There's no score in extra time. And then in the penalty shootout, Inter just bottled it completely. Zamorano missed, Djorkaeff scored, Winter missed. Anderbruch, Thon, Max and Wilmots all scored for Schalke. But in the second leg, Paul Ince is back in the team. So the midfield gets even better, even stronger. Aaron Winter drops to the bench and Yuri Djorkaeff comes back in. And yet they still couldn't outdo Schalke, who, I mean, Schalke weren't great at the time. They were solid. They had some good players. Olaf Thon is one of my favourite players. He's a magnificent little midfielder. Obviously played sweeper late in his career as well, but odd one. Anyway, moving along. Cup Winners' Cup final, it's Barcelona beat PSG. There's no Italian interest there. Moving quickly along. 97-98. Juventus once again crowned champions. They win the title 5 points clear of Inter. Udinese finished third, Roma fourth, Fiorentina fifth, Parma sixth, Lazio seventh, Bologna eighth, and Sampdoria ninth. Milan, improving from last season's 11th place, finish in 10th. That season sees Brescia, Atalanta, Lecce, and Napoli all relegated, and that began the darkest time for Napoli. the club would end up getting wrapped up and then have to reform itself because of their financial issues. But Brescia and Atalanta were those type of clubs that kind of yo-yoed back then, would produce good players, play nice football, and they were the type of clubs that you'd like because, they weren't a threat. They weren't going to win anything, but they played good football and always had interesting players. Vicenza, after 8th the previous season, finishing 14th. In the top scorers, Oliver Bierhoff scores 27. Ronaldo scores 25 in his first season with Inter. Roberto Baggio gets 22 for Bologna. Batistuta gets 21. Del Piero gets 21. Montella gets 20. Filippo Inzaghi gets 18 for Juve. Dario Hupner scores 16 for Brescia. Luis Oliveira gets 15 for Fiorentina. Abel Balbo and Carmen Esposito score 14 for Roma and Empoli, respectively. In the Coppa Italia, Lazio claim glory, beating AC Milan. George Weah scores the only goal of the game in the first leg as Milan win 1-0. Milan go 2-0 up in the tie in the second leg with Albertini's goal. But then Lazio fire back. Gottardi, a Jugovic penalty, and Alessandro Nesta, 3 goals in 10 minutes, and Lazio claim the cup. In the European Cup that year, it's another Italian team in a final. For the 3rd year in a row, it's Juventus. They lose 1-0 to Real Madrid. The Real Madrid team that Capello had built the year before and then been let go because apparently the football wasn't pretty enough. They go on to win the European Cup under Jupp Heynckes, and that is one of the great teams. Bodo Illgner, Christian Panucci, Roberto Carlos at left back, the 2 centre-backs, the 2 best Spanish centre-backs ever, Manolo Sanchis and Fernando Hierro. The midfield is absolutely perfect. Fernando Redondo as the 6, Clarence Seedorf and Christian Karambu as the 8s. Couldn't find better balance if you had an open checkbook. Unbelievable. Raul playing as the 10 behind Morientes and Predrag Mijatovic. Coming off the bench, you had Davor Suker. That is a great, great team. The Juve team, Peruzzi, Torricelli, Giuliano and Montero as a back 3. Delivio, Deschamps, Davids and Pessotto as a midfield 4. Zidane behind Inzaghi and Del Piero. Coming off the bench, you had Antonio Conte, you had Tacchinardi, you had Daniel Fonseca, and an unused sub, Nicola Amoruso. Real win 1-0. Mijatovic's goal on 66. Not a great final, but that's a great, great Real Madrid team. And Juve are just so unlucky in this era because they run into a great Dortmund team and then a great Real team. And they could easily have won 3 European Cups. Easily won 3 European Cups. If they'd come along a bit earlier, they probably would have won multiple. If they'd come along a year earlier, they probably would have beaten Ajax in 94, 95. If they'd come along after, I think that Juventus team beats United in 99 because United were so exhausted by the end of that season. Maybe not. Maybe they just came along at the right era and they got what they deserved. Europa League final in 97, 98 sees Inter Milan beat Lazio. So this is the first year we go to the single game UEFA Cup final, and I still don't like it, but it is what it is. 2 Italian clubs, 1 game, played in Paris at the Parc des Princes. Zamorano, Zanetti, and Ronaldo with the goals. Again, you've got just great names in that Inter team. You've got Diego Simeone, you've got Aaron Winter, you've got Zanetti, you've got Taribo West, you've got Yuri Djorkaeff, you've got Zamorano, you've got Ronaldo. On the bench, you've got Alvaro Recoba and Nwankwo Kanu. And the Lazio team, I mean, it's taking shape and about to become One of my favorite teams ever. You've got Nesta, Negro, and Favali in the back four. Now, Negro, who would play right back in their title-winning team, was playing centre-back at this point. In midfield, you've got Diego Fuzer on the right. You've got Pavel Nedved on the left. You've got Vladimir Jugovic, who they bought from Juve, in midfield. You've got Casaraghi and Mancini up front. And Matthias Almeida coming off the bench to get himself sent off. Him and Taribo West sent off in the game. Just great fun to be had all round. In the Cup Winners' Cup, Chelsea beat Stuttgart 1-0. And we don't need to talk about it because there's no Italian team involved. Moving on then to the 98-99 season. And as I mentioned, Milan had two stinkers in a row. They bounced back and won a league title. Alberto Zaccaroni, who I just mentioned, winning the league title with Milan. And I mean, it seems like this season was just a cursed year for a number of reasons. This is off the back, remember, of the 98 World Cup. Inter are coming in full of belief, having won the UEFA Cup, having finished second, with the best player in the world at the time, and his knee explodes. And they end up finishing eighth. Milan win the title, 1 point ahead of Lazio. Fiorentina finished third, 13 points behind Lazio. So it was literally Milan and Lazio neck and neck. Parma fourth, Roma fifth, Udinese sixth, Juve seventh. So what a fall off after 3 straight European Cups, back-to-back titles, 3 titles in 4 years. They just collapse. Relegated, Salernitana, Sampdoria, only 8 years after winning the league title. Vicenza and Empoli all relegated. Some managers there of note. Carlo Mazzone was at Bologna that year. Roy the Hodge Hodgson at Inter Milan. Carlo Ancelotti at Juve. Ericsson is obviously at Lazio now. Boskov is with Perugia. Spalletti is with Sampdoria. This is the first time we're really getting to know him. And Guidin is at Udinese. Top scorers, Marco Amoruso, what a player. Again, World Soccer Magazine did a small feature on him when he was at Guarani in Brazil. So that's how you found out about players back then. You read their name in a magazine and you waited for somebody to buy them. So he arrives in Europe with Udinese, who were kind of one of the clubs that would regularly bring over South American players. A lot of Italian clubs did it, but they'd go a little bit more obscure. Not just buying from like your River Plates and Bocas and Flamengos and Sao Paulos and that. He gets 22 goals. Batistuta gets 21. Bierhoff gets 20. Marco Del Vecchio with 18 for Roma. Hernan Crespo with Parma. Roberto Muzzi with Cagliari both get 16. Simone Inzaghi makes his first appearance with 15. Marcelo Salas scores 15 for Lazio. He's another one that I found in World Soccer Magazine. He was playing for Universidad de Chile when he was featured in World Soccer Magazine. And then he went to River Plate for a couple of years and then found his way to Europe. I loved Salas and I loved Amoruso. And I think it's just because I'd read about them and you felt like you knew about somebody that other people didn't know about. Amoruso would do really well with Udinese, go to Parma, did okay there, went to Borussia Dortmund, was great and then got injured and then his career just sort of tailed off and Dortmund fell into a financial mess. But the two of them were big favourites of mine back in the day. Ronaldo scores 14 goals before his knee explodes. And it is one of those you wish you'd never seen it happen kind of moments. He'd only played 19 games. He scored 14 goals. Like, it was just stupid how much better than everybody else he was. In the Coppa Italia, Parma win the trophy, beating Fiorentina in the final. Again, we're still at 2 legs. Again, it's 1-1 in the first leg. Crespo scores to put Parma 1 up. Batistuta scores to equalise. We're going to Florence for a second leg. Fiorentina have an away goal. They should be favourites. Crespo puts Parma 1 up. Repka equalises. Kois puts Fiorentina 2-1 up, and they're now winning 3-2 in aggregate. But Vanoli scores to equalise and give the competition to Parma on away goals. European Cup. Manchester United win it over Bayern Munich. So there's no Italian interest. So, well, we don't really care. In the UEFA Cup, once again, it's an Italian team winning. It's Parma. We've talked about that final before when we did our Parma look back. They beat Marseille 3-0. Crespo, Vanioli, and Federico Chiesa. Look at that Parma team. Look at that. First of all, let's acknowledge that there's good players in that Marseille team. Laurent Blanc is there. He's just won a World Cup. Robert Pires is there. Florian Maurice is there. That's a good team. Liverpool legend Titi Camara came off the bench for Marseille in that one. But look at that Parma team. It is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So they win the Coppa Italia and the UEFA Cup that year. You've got Gigi Buffon in goal. You've got Lilian Thuram at right back. Well, sorry, right of a 3. You've got Cannavaro in the middle of the 3. And you've got Roberto Sensini. No, Cannavaro was left of the 3. Sensini was in the middle. Thuram, Sensini, Cannavaro. Like that's ridiculous. In midfield, you've got Dino Baggio and Alan Bogossian sitting in front of them. 2 defensive midfielders. Baggio has had a bit of box-to-box about him. Diego Fuser is playing as a right winger / right wing back. Paolo Vanioli is doing the same on the left-hand side. Juan Sebastian Veron behind Crespo and Chiesa. If you're looking for players that define this era in Italian football, Buffon, Thuram, Sensini, Cannavaro, Veron, Crespo, and Chiesa will all feature strongly in that conversation. As will Dino Baggio a little bit later, as will Diego Fuser a little bit later, as will Alan Bogassian a little bit later, well, an extra little bit later. The one name that won't come a whole lot is Vanoli. By the way, on the bench, you've got Luigi Appolini, really good defender. Stefano Fiore, really good midfielder that a bunch of clubs paid a lot of money for. You've got Faustino Esprilla, back from his time with Newcastle. And you've got Abel Balbo, who was excellent. Like, this isn't Milan or Inter or Juve or either of the Rome clubs. This is Parma with this level of talent. That's stupid how good they were. But Paolo Vanoli is just one to stop and consider. He's currently the manager of Venezia. He was manager of Spartak Moscow before that. He worked in the Italian setup for years and years, then went to Chelsea with Conte, and then he worked under Conte at Inter as well. Like his career, it's kind of he's a nondescript journeyman. Varese, Beranzago, Corsico, Venetia, Hellas Verona. Joins Parma, stays there 2 years, scores goals in 2 cup finals that they win, then goes to Fiorentina for 2 years, then he's at Bologna for a year, then he's at Rangers for a year, then he's at Vicenza for a year, and then it kind of peters out. But like, he's not someone that will ever come up. And rightly so, when you're talking about the great players of that era. But he managed to have an incredible couple of years with Parma and then Fiorentina. He's made himself a really valuable player. And that season in particular, he proves his value scoring in 2 cup finals. But that team, that's disgustingly good. That's outrageous that that's the talent level that they had at their club. Mario Stanic was there as well. He missed the UEFA Cup final. He was injured. He'd obviously go and join Chelsea in 2000 and it was okay for them, but he was really good for Parma. But what a team. It's absolutely ridiculous how good that team was. And they had great versatility as well. Bogassian could drop out. Veron could play in midfield. Stanic could come in on the wing. They could move to a back three, back four. It was all just so flexible. Malasani did a great job with that. A genuinely great job with that. Moving ourselves right along, we have a Cup Winners' Cup final, which features Lazio against Mallorca. And this is, unfortunately, the last Cup Winners' Cup final. The competition was merged into the UEFA Cup after this, in something that I'm still bitter about. But Lazio win the Cup. They beat Mallorca. Mallorca have some really interesting players at the time. Carlos Roa, who was the Argentine national team goalkeeper, would retire at one point to go and become a religious missionary. Marcelinho playing at centre-back. Miguel Soler playing at left-back. Loren, who obviously we talked about a bit earlier for Arsenal, he's playing on the right side of midfield for them. But the Lazio team is just, it is absolutely ridiculous how loaded this team is. Marchegiani in goal. Panchero filling in at right back. Negro wasn't fully fit. Nesta and Mihailovic in the central of defence. Favali at left back. Midfield, Stankovic, Mancini, Almeida, Nedved. Salas and Vieri up front. On the bench, Negro, Gottardi, Couto, Lombardo, Ivan Della Pena, was a favourite of mine. He was always fun to watch. And Sergio Conceição. Like, what a team. What a ridiculous team. Christian Vieri scored on 7 minutes. Danny, who's probably the most handsome footballer. Is that the right one? No, it's not the right one. I'm thinking of the one that went to West Ham. He'd have been a little bit later, wouldn't he? Yeah, he'd have been a couple of years later, I think. Anyway, he equalises on 11 minutes and Pavel Nedved scores the winner on 81 minutes. But just to think of the strength of those two teams, Parma and Lazio that season, neither of whom won the league. Lazio did finish second, Parma finished third. You're a really strong Fiorentina. Even with Juve having a bad season and Inter having the year from hell, you've still got a great top four that year. We'll move along. 99-2000. I've been over this season a couple of times. Lazio win the league, point ahead of Juve, who bounced back. Milan finished third, Inter fourth, Parma fifth, Roma sixth, Fiorentina seventh. Relegated, we have Torino, Venezia, Cagliari, and Piacenza. Top scorers, Shevchenko, 24. Batistuta got 23, Crespo, 22. Montella and Ferrante got 18. Ferrante got 18 in the Torino team that got relegated. Filippo Inzaghi, Cristiano Loccarelli, and Beppe Signore got 15 each. Signore had moved on at that point to Bologna. Christian Vieri got 13 for Inter. Roberto Muzzi and Marcelo Salas got 12 apiece. I love that Lazio team. It's one of my favorite teams of all time, but I've already talked about them on this podcast, so I'm not gonna go too deep into the woods on them. In the Coppa Italia final, Lazio complete the double, beating Inter 2-1 in aggregate, beat them 2-1 in the home leg. Clarence Seedorf had put Inter 1 up. Pavel Nedved and Diego Simeone got the goals for Lazio, and the second leg ended 0-0. Lazio win the double. European Cup, Real Madrid beat Valencia, so we have no Italian involvement. And in the UEFA Cup, I don't think it had been rebranded to the Europa League yet. What year did it get rebranded? Was it 06? Let's see. Oh, it was later. It was 09-10 was the rebrand. So we still have 10 more years of the UEFA Cup. Anyway, Galatasaray beat Arsenal. Game ended 0-0, went to penalties, and Arsenal just choked. Davor Suker and Patrick Vieira missing. Ray Parlour did score, but Galatasaray scored all 4 of those. Notable players in that Galatasaray team: Claudio Taffarel in goal, Hakan Suker up front. Do read up on what's happened to him if you haven't before. And then the 2 that I just adore from that team: Georgi Hagi, the greatest Romanian player of all time. Absolutely incredible attacking midfielder. A left foot that was just a gift to everybody. And Gica Popescu, who I've talked about a bunch. Great defensive midfielder, great sweeper. At that point was playing as a centre-back. Was well past his best, but still more than good enough to stop the Henri Bergkamp forward pairing. That was a decent Arsenal team. Anyway, we can move on then to 2000-2001, where we have the league title being won by Roma. That's Fabio Capello's Roma. That's a really, really strong team where Capello had spent a whole bunch of money. Juve finished second, Lazio third, Parma fourth, Inter fifth, Milan sixth. Going down, Regina, Vicenza, Napoli, and Bari. Vicenza are, at this point, just sort of a yo-yo. Top scorers, Hernan Crespo, 26 goals for Lazio. Shevchenko got 24. Chiesa got 22 for Fiorentina. He went there to replace Batistuta, who went to Roma, who scored 20. Christian Vieri got 18 for Inter. Dario Hupner got 17 for Brescia. Marco Di Vaio, another really good player around the time, 15. Beppe Signore, 15. Roberto Sosa, quality Argentine that most people don't remember, scored 15 for Udinese. David Trezeguet got 14 for Juventus. Francesco Totti got 13, as did Vincenzo Montella. So you had the Roma front 3 contributing 46 goals between them in the league. That's a hell of an effort. In the Coppa Italia in 2000-2001, Fiorentina beat Parma in the final. 1-0 in the first leg. Vanoli scores again. And then in the second leg, the game ends 1-1. Nuno Gomez equalises after Savo Milosevic, formerly of Aston Villa, had put Parma 1-up. Parma had not replaced Crespo all that well. The Crespo-Chiesa pairing, when they left, this is the start of their major financial troubles. They had to sell everybody, basically. But yeah, Milosevic wasn't. He was all right. He wasn't great. But Vanoli was one of those that left Parma, goes to Fiorentina and scores in another final. So like I said, he didn't have a great career, but he won 3 cups and he scored goals to help win them all. So that's a fair effort. 2000-2001 European Cup, Bayern Munich beat Valencia. 2000-2001 UEFA Cup, Liverpool beat Deportivo. You note now that the Italian dominance in Europe is dipping. Now, it doesn't disappear entirely, but it is dipping. The league is still really strong, but other leagues are starting to catch up with them. Other leagues are very much starting to catch up with them. 2001-2002, league title is won by Juventus. Their 26th title. Hector Cooper is rocked up at Inter after getting to 2 European Cup finals with Valencia and falling short in both. Sven-Göran Eriksson has left Lazio to take over the England job. Alberto Zaccaroni takes over Lazio, and unfortunately it doesn't go well at all. Juve win the title. Roma finished second. Inter finished third. Milan finished fourth. Chievo fifth. Lazio sixth. Bologna seventh. Perugia eighth. Atalanta ninth. And Parma in 10th. Like I said, selling everybody and not replacing them all that well. Hellas Verona, Lecce, and Vicenza relegated. Also relegated that year, Fiorentina, who also went into administration, who also went into bankruptcy, who also had to reform themselves, having been denied entry into Serie B the following season. They came really close to not existing again after that. But the Phoenix Club was put in place. And the Phoenix Club is what we now know. David Trezeguet, top scorer with 24. Joint top scorer was Dario Hupner with 24. Christian Vieri got 22. Marco Di Vaio got 20. Maniero got 18 for Venezia. Del Piero scored 16 for Juve. Cristiano Doni, who I really liked, really good wide midfielder, creative player, very similar, not very, similar enough to Robert Pires in how he played, more of a goal scorer than Pires, but really, really good. Coppa Italia in the 01-02 season, won by Parma again. This was sort of the dead cat bounce. They beat Juventus 2-1 on aggregate. They did get a goal from Hidetoshi Nakata, who I think might be he's the second most arrogant player I think ever. The first is obviously Zlatan, but Nakata is definitely second. That man once wrote a book and then instructed the people of Japan to thank him for getting them to a World Cup. Good player nonetheless, but still. European Cup final, Real Madrid beat Bayer Leverkusen. Feyenoord beat Borussia Dortmund in the UEFA Cup final. We carry on then. 02-03. Juventus win the league title. That Juventus team, powered by Pavel Nedved, was just fantastic. Finished 7 points clear of Inter. Milan third. Lazio fourth. Parma fifth. Udinese sixth. Chievo seventh. Roma drop off into eighth. Relegated Atalanta, Piacenza, Como, and Torino. In the top scorers, Christian Vieri with 24, Adrian Mutu with 18, Filippo Inzaghi with 17, Del Piero with 16, Adriano. To be fair, Mutu and Adriano is a hell of a strike pairing for Parma. So this is probably why they ended up going bust, is that they started spending money again, having sold everybody. But that is a hell of a pairing. Claudio Lopez with 15 for Lazio. Unfortunately, Hernan Crespo no longer doing the business there. That was probably Claudio Lopez's best season with Lazio. In the Coppa Italia, excuse me. Milan win the competition, beating Roma in the final. 4-1 in the first leg in Rome. It's a hell of a hiding. And then a 2-2 draw in the second game. Milan take home the trophy. They would also take home the Champions League that year. They played Juventus in one of the duller European Cup finals at Old Trafford. No Nedved, he was suspended. Game ended 0-0, went to penalties. Trezeguet missed, Birondelli scored. Sorry, let me start again. Trezeguet missed, Serginho scored. Birondelli scored, Seedorf missed. So you were 1-1 after two penalties. Zalieta misses, Kaladze misses. Montero misses, Nesta scores. Del Piero scores, Shevchenko scores, and Milan win the European Cup 3-2 after penalties. If Nedved had played, I'm firmly of the belief that Juventus win that final. Lots of good players. They're both really good teams. But I think he was so, like, he won the Ballon d'Or that year. And he deserved to. Before any Arsenal fan starts cribbing, he deserved to. He was great. In the UEFA Cup, some fella called Jose Mourinho leads Porto to a 3-2 win over Celtic that I'd rather not talk about at this difficult time. 03-04, Milan are once again league champions, 11 points clear of Roma. Then we go Juve, 2 points back, and then a 10-point gap to Inter. Parma, Lazio, and Udinese finish 5th through 7th. Going down, Perugia, Modena, Empoli, and Ancona, who go through the same nightmare as what Fiorentina had gone through. Relegation, administration, bankruptcy, fold the club, Phoenix Club, and start over. Obviously not the same historic importance to the global footballing world as Fiorentina, but for any community to lose their football club is tough. Shevchenko top scorer that year with 24, Gilardini with 23, Totti with 20, Javier Chivantin, who I completely forgot about, scored 19 for Lecce. Adriano scored 17 for Inter that year, having come back from Parma. Trezeguet got 16. Antonio Cassano, who should have been a great, gets 14 goals. What a lunatic. Coppa Italia, Lazio beat Juve in the final. 2-0 in Rome. Fiore scores both. They go to Turin. Juve get 2 back. It's 2-2. Juve are clear favourites now to win it. Corradi scores in the 69th minute. That's Bernardo Corradi, who would be a Manchester City player in the year 2006 when the Thai fella, the president, Thaksin Shinawatra, when he bought the club and started pumping some money in, he was one of the players that came into the club at the time. And then Fiore scores a late goal to wrap it up, 4-2 to Lazio on aggregate. European Cup, that Mourinho fella beats Monaco 3-0. And in the UEFA Cup, Valencia beat Marseille. So again, like I said, Italian dominance of Europe has dropped off, but it's not gone. Well, no, the dominance is gone, but they're not gone. They're still making an impression. They're just not what they were. 04-05, this is where the shenanigans really kick in. Juventus win the title, 7 points clear of Milan. Inter finished 3rd, Udinese 4th, Sampdoria 5th, Palmero 6th, Roma finished 8th, Lazio finished 13th, Bologna, Brescia, and Atalanta are relegated. Fiorentina have returned to the big time. They finish 16th, and Parma finished 17th. Juve were stripped of that title. Fabio Capello was the manager. They had an incredible team. They were the best team by a considerable margin. They were one of the best teams in Europe, but that title was stripped from them. Inter win the Coppa Italia, beating Roma in the final. 3-0 on aggregate. Adriano with both goals in the first leg. Sinisa Mihailovic with the only goal in the second leg. In the UEFA, in the Champions League, we get an Italian team back in a European Cup final. It's Milan, as you would expect, and they lose to Liverpool 3-3 after 120 minutes to penalties, and Liverpool claim victory. In the UEFA Cup, CSKA Moscow beat Sporting of Lisbon. And then we have our final season, 05-06. Juve win the league again. You look at a league title now, it'll tell you that Inter won the league. Juve finished 15 points clear of Inter. Juve won the league that year comfortably. 27 wins, 10 draws, 1 defeat. 91 points. Inter had 76 points. You're trying to tell me you're legitimate league champions and you finish 15 points behind? Inter, if they'd any self-respect, would give that title back. Roma finished 3rd, Milan 4th, Chievo 5th, Palermo 6th, Livorno 7th, Parma bounced back into 8th, Fiorentina continue to climb up into 9th. Lazio finished 16th. Lecce, Treviso, and because of Calciopoli, Juventus are relegated. Juventus winning the league and been relegated in the same year. Probably not going to be repeated. Top scorers that year, we had Luca Toni with 31 goals for Fiorentina. David Trezeguet got 23 for Juve. David Suazo, really, really good Honduran striker, got 22 for Cagliari. Cristiano Lucarelli gets 19 for Livorno. There's rarely ever been a club and a player more suited to themselves, to each other, than Cristiano Lucarelli and Livorno. It is magnificent. He is the most left wing of all left wing, and they are the most left wing of all left wing. They're not pretend communists like you find on Twitter. They're real communists. Shevchenko gets 19. European Cup that year, Barcelona beat Arsenal 2-1 in the final. UEFA Cup that year, Sevilla beat Middlesbrough 4-0 to start their kind of dominance of the UEFA Cup. And that's it. That is us wrapped through 20 years of Serie A. And obviously, the whole scandal breaks that summer. Juve are relegated. Lazio are docked a significant amount of points. Like Lazio should have ended with 48, 62 points. They had 30 points deducted. Milan, who actually finished second that year with 88 points, only 3 behind Juve, they got docked 30 points. And Fiorentina, who finished on 74 points, they got docked. So your top 4 was Juve, Milan, Fiorentina, and Inter finished 4th. No, sorry, Inter finished third. 2 points ahead of Fiorentina. You finished 3rd, and you're trying to claim that's a league title. You should give it back and not be playing such fools. Not be annoying people with your garbage. You no more won that league title than I did. Give it back to fuck. Right. They Italy won the World Cup after that, so it kind of made everybody forget what had gone on. But I've rambled and bumbled and stumbled through that. It was probably garbage to listen. I do apologise. I'm having a weird day. I will be back after the break with the gossip. Right, welcome back. So, obviously, tomorrow is deadline day, so we'll just go through a bunch of transfers tomorrow. No point in looking at what's going on right now. In the Asian Cup, Iran are 1-0 up against Syria. Mediterranean scored a penalty, and they're 1-0 up. Aberdeen have sacked Barry Robson as their manager, saying that 8th place in the Scottish Premiership is unacceptable, which, to be fair, is true. BBC have an interesting article up. 6 players from the AFCON to keep an eye on as ones that top European clubs might be looking at. And the first one mentioned is the one I told you to keep an eye on. It is Lamine Camara. He's just a sensational footballer. Jesus, I'm not sure how he pronounces his name. Owono, the Alaves, an Equatorial Guinea goalkeeper. Must admit, I didn't watch a whole lot of them in the competition. Watched the game against Guinea. He didn't stand out to me. Imam Ashur of Al Ahly and Egypt. He's definitely one that I think will get a decent move. He's at Midtjylland, or he was at Midtjylland. He's gone back to his homeland. I think he'll come back to Europe again. Aboubakari Koita of Mauritania. Again, not someone I'm familiar with. Gelson Dalla does look a player. Now, he plays for Al Wakra and Angola. He does look a player. He might be somebody that gets a decent move in the next 12 months. Agabu Kamara is the last one they've listed here. He is the Ghanaian forward who's owned by Olympiacos, currently on loan with Atramitos. If I'm not mistaken, about 18 months ago, he was linked with Liverpool. I'm almost certain it was him. Yeah, Lille to Olympiacos. Started well. Then he sort of ran out of steam last year. Had a really bad season. And he's been on loan with Atramitos since January of last year. But still only 22. Very, very talented. So yeah, that's an interesting thing. We'll just do the gossip and just get me out of here for today because I'm running out of steam. Paris Saint-Germain could revive their interest in Marcus Rashford. I deem that unlikely. Tottenham are considering a 50 million move for Dominic Solanke. Yeah, I mean, he's having a great season. I'd like to see it be repeated, but, Tottenham may make a late bid for Conor Gallagher. I just don't see it. I just don't see it at all. Wolves are interested in Armando Broja, as are Fulham, but neither are anywhere close to Chelsea's 50 million valuation. West Ham are keen to replace Said Benrahma with Jota. It looks like Benrahma will join Lyon on loan with an option to buy. Aston Villa have finally agreed a deal for Morgan Rogers. I still don't understand selling Cameron Archer to then go and buy Morgan Rogers. Liverpool could move for Tosin Adarabioyo in the summer. Makes sense. He's on a free. I have doubts. Bayern Munich, Brian Zaragoza. We talked about that yesterday. We talked about Moise Keane yesterday. Talked about Facundo Palestri yesterday. It does look like Lyon are getting close to a deal for Aurel Mangala. I'm really, really surprised by that. I'd love to know where Lyon got all the money from because they were crying poor in the summer. Maybe just desperation now they have to spend. Manchester United hope to appoint a director of football in the next few days before a summer purge in their recruitment department. It's good news for everybody who works there. Fulham, Crystal Palace and Nottingham Forest have been put off by the 25 million price tag Chelsea have placed on Trevoh Chalobah. West Ham turned down an inquiry for Ben Johnson. Talked about that yesterday. Brighton have opened talks over a move for Bryan Hill of Tottenham. Odd one. Manchester United and Ivory Coast winger Amad Diallo was keen to return to Sunderland. Well, others have said he's not, so who knows. Arsenal's 19-year-old English midfielder is set to join Hertha Berlin. Apparently that's on a permanent deal. Robbie Williams is preparing a bid to buy Port Vale. He's obviously a lifelong Port Vale fan. And Leicester City will not sell Kieran Dewsbury Hall. If they get the right bid, they will sell him. That is it. That is all we have. There is no other gossip. There is no other news. We've covered everything I can think of to cover today. Tomorrow we'll look at what's actually going on in the transfer market. Today, I believe, is the deadline day for the Women's Super League. So likely to be some moves there. And I can see that there is a Welsh international, Angarad. She's Welsh. I think it's Angarad. Angarad James has joined Seattle Reign in the United States from Tottenham for an undisclosed fee. She'll be teaming up with her international colleague Jess Fishlock there, I would imagine. I assume Jess Fishlock, she is still there. So that might have played a part in that one. Right, folks, that's me. I will talk to you tomorrow. Hopefully I'll be better tomorrow. Today was not good. Bye-bye.
Podcast Network.